All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the second edition for this fall of Skype a Scientist Live. These are 45-minute sessions where we'll be asking all of your questions of some of my favorite scientists and science communicators in the field. Today, we are going to be talking about whales with my friend Eman. Eman, thanks for being with us.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome. I met Imam back in January at the annual, what I tell my friends is like the Animal Facts Conference. It's the Society for Integrative and Comparative Biology. We all gather there every year, and I pick out some of the people who I just think are doing cool stuff and are good at talking about it. So that's how we came to be today. So, okay, here's how this is going to work. We're going to be here together for 45 minutes. You submit all of the questions that you have about whales using the Q&A format. Please only submit your questions once because I'll be reading through all of them as we go and reading them out loud. Our scientist today will talk about her work first, and then we'll roll into that Q&A. That's really all the housekeeping I have for today. So with that, thanks for being here, and I'm going to hand it over to talk about whales.
Thank you. Um, I am very excited to be here. So as I was kindly introduced, my name is Eman. I am doing my PhD in marine biology, and I study humpback whales and other whales that are off of Massachusetts. Before I talk about the work that I'm currently doing right now, I want to take a little bit of time to talk about what got me into studying whales, since I hear there are a lot of aspiring scientists in the room with us today. So before I decided I wanted to do whales, I kind of had no idea what I was going to do. I knew I wanted to be a marine biologist from the young age of 5 years old. So that is a long time that I spent wanting to study the ocean and things in the ocean. But I had no idea what I wanted to study in the ocean. So I decided to do a lot of exploration and just be really curious about the world that I live in and the opportunities that were there for me to do. I did all of this exploring when I was doing my bachelor's degree or my undergraduate degree. So I spent some time doing research on sand dunes and giant clams in Australia, and that was super cool. It was very beautiful in Australia, but after doing that research, it was fun, but I knew it wasn't what I wanted to study forever. I tried to do some shark research. I did some shark tagging, and I realized I love sharks. They're super cool. I have some of my closest friends and scientists friends are shark researchers, but I knew that sharks weren't something I wanted to study. I tried to do some research on fiddler crabs, and that was, again, super fun. There's a photo of me. This is the first time, this photo in the right-hand corner is the first time I was in the field collecting fiddler crabs for my research. I was very excited wearing my Science is Cool shirt. But after doing that research for a couple of summers, I was like, I'm not really interested in doing this much longer. So for a brief moment, I even considered what my life would look like if I didn't study things in the ocean, and I decided to go work in a lab with mice. And I decided I hated that. I definitely picked the right job as a marine biologist. I only really want to research things in the ocean. So after all of those wonderful experiences, which were very valuable because I learned the things I didn't like to do, I ended up doing a very cool research experience here in Boston on whales. And that is the photo in the bottom right corner. That is a photo of me with one of my favorite humpback whales of all time. And that experience was my first time seeing whales. I realized whales were amazing. I love being on boats, and I want to study whales for a very, very long time. How long exactly? No one knows, but for a very long time. So that leads me to where I am now. After I finished my undergraduate degree, I moved back to Boston and I started studying whales full time. I study behavioral ontogeny, which is a very fancy scientific way of saying I study how the behaviors of whales change as they get older and as they grow and learn about the world they live in. So now I go out on whale watch boats, and there's a photo of a boat on the top of the slide. That is actually one of my favorite boats to go out on. And we go out on these whale watch boats and find whales in an area called Stellwagen Bank. So this is a photo of the southern Gulf of Maine. It's this chart here. You can see Cape Cod Bay, and you can see that red outlined area. That is Stellwagen Bank National Marine Sanctuary. It's an area where the whales come to feed. So we go out to that area and we look for whales. And when we find the whales, we collect data on what we are seeing with them. So we document who is out there, what kind of whales they are, what behaviors they're doing, where they are, who they're with, all sorts of information like that. Some of these other photos on the screen here are a picture of me. The one on the left is a picture of me standing on the highest point of the boat. So if you look at this top photo of the boat, you can see there are 3 decks to it. I'm on the very top deck, and on top of the top deck, there is something called a crow's nest. And if you see, I'm standing up there and I'm about shoulder height to everybody else. That means that I have the best vantage point to find the whales. And I've got a camera up to my face taking pictures of the whales that we are seeing. And then in that other photo, that's just me with one of my favorite whales we have on Stellwagen Bank. So a little bit about the whales that I study. I focus specifically on humpback whales. Humpback whales are about 55 to 60 feet long, approximately the size of a big giant yellow school bus. So if you have ever gone to school on a big giant yellow school bus, that's about the same size as a humpback whale. These guys are about 40 tons. It's about 80,000 pounds when they're fully grown, and they live up to 80 to 100 years. Now, what makes a humpback whale is the fact that they've got baleen in their mouth. Baleen is what replaces their teeth. They don't have teeth like we do. Instead, they've got baleen, which is a structure made out of keratin. It's what our nails are made out of. They've got tubercles, which are these little bumps on their head and jaw. And inside those tubercles, they actually have whiskers that help them sense information about their environment. They have ventral pleats, which are folds of skin on their throat and belly that expand while they're feeding. And then they've got super, super long arms, or pectoral flippers. Those arms are about the size of a giraffe. Now, while we are out, oh no, one of my photos is gone. Well, we're just gonna have to roll with that. While we're out with the whales, we actually get to see lots of other animals too. So one of the really cool things about science is you can pick a little lane for you to do research in, but you're actually gonna oftentimes end up doing other things as well. So I study humpback whales, but we see lots of other animals while we're out looking for humpback whales that I also get to study. Some of the other animals we get to see are harbor seals, Atlantic white-sided dolphins, lots and lots of seabirds that like to hang out around the whales, especially when they're feeding. And sometimes they like to ride on top of the whales like these birds are doing in this photo, riding that whale like a surfboard. You have to use your imagination for this one, but there was a photo of a blue shark there. They are a very cute looking shark that are a little bit blue in color. When you have some time, you can look up a picture of what those look like. And then we see lots of basking sharks and ocean sunfish. So lots of other animals exist in the southern Gulf of Maine that I get to do research on as well. That's where the photo is. Okay, so it's animated. Now you know what a blue shark looks like. Continuing on, not all of my research happens on boats on the water. So for every hour I spend on the water, I spend 4 or 5 hours sitting at my computer analyzing the data. And when I say analyzing the data, what I basically mean is we dig through all the data we collect, and we're looking for trends in the data to answer questions like, do whales feed more during the spring or the summer? Do older whales like to feed with bubbles, or do they like to feed without bubbles? And do older whales or younger whales like to jump more? So these are questions that we have, and we use the data we collect to answer those questions. I often do a lot of this data analysis with my research assistant, who is my cat. And this photo here in the middle at the bottom shows all of the data that we've collected over a period of 1 month. So that's just 1 month of data that we have collected. So we have to sift through all of that data, put it onto a computer, and start analyzing it, which is actually a really, really fun part of science. And now I've got some videos here. So I'm going to go through these videos one by one. The first one that started playing, oh, wow, they're all playing. Okay. Well, in this bottom video here, we have a video of a humpback whale that is doing a behavior called lunge feeding. And it's doing it with bubbles. So this green water that's here, I'm not sure if you can see my mouse pointing to it, but all of that green water is bubbles that the whales actually use to scare the fish into a tight location, and then they're gonna feed on the fish. And this video up here at the top, this is actually a bunch of whales doing this behavior together. They're all starting. So in this video, if you actually wanna try to count how many whales there are, wow, everything is going. Okay, this is not how I had it planned. But in this video, there are a group of whales feeding together, and you can try counting them as we're sitting on this slide, but you can see those little green bubbles there. You can see all of the birds. There are hundreds of birds crowded around the area trying to get fish from these whales. And if I remember correctly, in this, what we call bubble net, there's a cooperative group of whales bubble feeding together. We call it the specific behaviors of bubble net. There were 9 whales feeding. So I'm going to pause that video, move on to the next one. So we see lots of feeding behaviors in Stellwagen Bank. We also see some really cool behaviors where the whales splash a lot. So jumping is a really popular one, but one of my favorites is flipper slapping, where the whales roll to their side and hit their fin against the surface to scare fish. Sorry, not to scare fish, to communicate with each other. That's one of the behaviors that they get to do. And then one of the other really cool things we get to see is indications of whales' intelligence. So whales are really, really intelligent animals, and one of the characteristics of intelligent animals is they're very curious. So this whale got really curious of our boat and swam over to us. It actually swam underneath us and just came to check us out, which is a very, very cool indication of how smart and curious these animals are. All right. So the last thing I'm going to talk about, because I know that we've got lots of really incredible questions coming in, I want to talk about one very cool research technique we get to do with whales. So with humpback whales, we can actually identify different individuals down to the individual whale. So we're not just saying, oh, that's a humpback whale. We actually know exactly which humpback whale we're looking at. And we can do that based on the patterns on the underside of their tails and also by their dorsal fins. So the dorsal fin is the fin that sits on top of their back. And they have unique patterns on the underside of their tails. It's kind of like a fingerprint. We all have unique fingerprints. The whales all have unique fluke prints. And then those dorsal fins also range in shape and size. So you can see with these 3 examples, they all are different in terms of their shape and size. So all of our whales in the Gulf of Maine have their own names. We give them names based on these patterns that we find on their tails. We try to make it easy for us to ID them, kind of like finding pictures in clouds. We try to find pictures in their tails. So these examples, I feel like the math teachers might like this one here at the top. This is a whale named 3.14, and he was named because this portion of his tail right here looks like the symbol for pi, which is a mathematical term. There's already a whale named pi in our population, so we gave him the next best thing, which is the first 3 digits of pi, which is 3.14. We have a whale named Nile based on this marking here that looks like the Nile River. Fern, based on this marking here, that's actually an orca rake mark. So she was attacked by orcas at some point. That looks like a fern. And then Valley for this mark right here. It's like a little divot in her tail that looks like a valley. So we can give the whales names and then we can identify them year after year when we are studying them, which is probably one of my favorite parts of my job, is to see whales year after year and to see the same whales year after year. So I will end on this slide. Thank you for listening, and we can jump into all of these incredible questions that are coming in.
All right, amazing. Could you, before we start the questions, could you minimize the screen sharing just so that the ASL interpretation is larger on the screen?
Absolutely.
Amazing. Thank you. We've got 50 questions.
Oh,
So
amazing.
let's begin. So you mentioned that orcas can sometimes antagonize humpbacks, at least bite their tails. The first question we had from Mrs. Schubacher was, do whales have any predators?
Great question. So humpback whales are pretty massive. They are about, as I mentioned, 55 to 60 feet. So there aren't a lot of things in the ocean that actually go after them. To our knowledge, orcas or killer whales are the only animal that will attempt to predate a humpback whale when they are alive. And they typically are going after humpback whales when they are calves or juveniles, so when they're a lot smaller in size. We do find in the Gulf of Maine, we have a lot of humpback whales that have survived orca attacks, and we know that because of the rake marks or the teeth marks they have on their bodies. Once a humpback whale dies, there are a lot of things that will try to eat them while they are what we call scavengers. So a lot of animals will scavenge them. So birds, sharks, pretty much anything in the ocean that eats or scavenges will consume part of the whale when it's died.
Awesome. Thank you. Our next question from an anonymous attendee is, how long can a whale be out of the water?
Ooh, that's a really hard question to answer. So not very long, and it's not normal to see a whale out of the water. They are marine animals, so they are in the water all the time, unless something happens that forces them out of the water and they get beached. Typically, when a whale gets beached, it's usually sick or ill, injured in some way. So it's usually not going to survive very long. For animals that have been beached, that have been successfully put back into the water, typically they can't be out of the water for more than a couple of hours because their skin will dry out. The weight of their body pressing onto their lungs will make it hard for them to breathe. They can get burnt by the sun. So things like that can all make it very difficult for a whale to survive on land, which makes sense because they are meant to be in the ocean.
Totally. I know that hammerhead sharks can get suntans. Do whales get suntans too?
I don't think they get suntans. A lot of our whales are already pigmented, so they're
Yeah.
pretty dark, especially at the top of their body,
Hmm.
which there is a theory that pigmentation is sort of acting like sunblock.
Totally.
The melanin prevents sunburn, but I'm not sure about a suntan. I've never heard of that in whales.
I haven't heard of it either. I just was thinking about it. Okay.
Something to explore
Um,
now.
yeah, we'll have to look into it.
Yeah.
I don't know, like, because they're always up there. But whatever.
Mhm.
All right. Ms. Patakis's class wants to know how many types of whales are there in the world?
That's a great question. There are over 90 species of whales in the world, but not all of them are like humpback whales. So with the 90 species, they're all classified as cetaceans in the group Cetacea. And within Cetacea, we've got two subgroups. We have odontocetes. Those are your toothed whales. So anything with peg-like teeth, like what we have. So killer whales, sperm whales, dolphins, those are all of your odontocetes. And then we've got the mysticetes. Those are the baleen whales, like humpback whales, blue whales, fin whales, minke whales. So there are two groups, and between the two groups, there are over 90 species.
Great, thanks. Mara wants to know, is it scary to tag a shark, and how do you tag a shark?
Okay, so I tagged sharks many, many years ago. I did not find it scary because I really like sharks and we do it in a pretty safe way. And the way that we did it back when I was doing it many years ago, and maybe things have changed a little bit. This is a question that should definitely go to a shark researcher. So this is just my experience. We would set out bait on little lines, and the sharks would come eat the bait and get hooked onto the line. And then we'd bring the shark up onto the boat and we'd make sure that the shark was always able to breathe. We'd put a pipe into the shark's mouth so water was running over its gills. So it was never without oxygen. And then we would just put the little tag onto its dorsal fin. It's a tag, it's like a little GPS tracker that would go through the cartilage on its fin. And then as soon as it was tagged, we would put it back into the water and release it. So the whole thing would only take just like a couple of minutes. The shark was not out of the water for much longer than that, and it always had water over its gills so it could breathe. But to get more information on how to do it in like a more detailed way, that's definitely a question for a shark researcher.
Why was that with the field school a couple months ago? They didn't, that was a perfect description of what I witnessed a couple months
Okay,
ago. So,
perfect. That's
I think
also
they're
where
doing
I
it.
did. That's where
Yeah.
I did the shark tagging as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw the picture. I was like, oh, looks
Yeah.
familiar. We got a question from Fairgrounds Middle School. Are whales more related to dolphins or porpoises?
Oh, that's such a good question. Okay, so porpoises are toothed whales and dolphins are also toothed whales. So I would say that dolphins and porpoises are more related to each other than porpoises are to whales. All of them are related to whales because, again, as I mentioned, they're all within that group Cetacea, but porpoises and dolphins are both within the group Odontocetes within Cetacea.
Cool. Quentin wants to know, or Claire in Quentin's class wants to know, what do whales eat?
Great question. That depends on the type of whale. For most of the whales that we have in Stellwagen Bank, it's small schooling fish, fish that are about this big. Their favorite food tends to be sand clams, which is a small fish that burrows in the sandy bottom of the ocean. And then that's what we have here in Stellwagen Bank. Some other whales, like sperm whales, are going to eat squid. There are some whales, like blue whales, that feed on krill. And then other whales, like North Atlantic right whales, that feed on even tinier organisms called plankton.
Nice. Thanks. Aaliyah wants to know, are whales smooth?
They are. They're very smooth. Um, I have touched whales before, not so let me give a little disclaimer here. It in the United States, it is illegal to touch whales unless you have a very specific research reason for doing it, which there's almost never a research reason to touch a whale, just to see how it feels. I've touched whales while doing necropsies on whales. A necropsy is when a whale has died and we basically dissect it to better understand why it has died and to do more research on that animal. So doing those necropsies, I've touched whales and they're very, very smooth animals.
Awesome. Our next question is from Jonah at Bridge Academy. Have you had any close calls when whales knock your boat over? How do you feel when whales swim under your boat?
Okay, close calls where whales almost knock the boat over. So this does, it happens somewhat frequently in the Northeast, where every year or so we have a whale that bumps into a recreational boat or completely flips over a boat. It's never intentional. The whale is not trying to act aggressively. Um, on the whale watch boats and on research boats, we are all trained to navigate around whales. So the captains and the researchers, we all get training on it. And whenever we're in areas where there are whales, we always have spotters on the boat. So the researchers tend to be the spotters. We're always keeping our eyes out on the water. We're always in communication with the captain, telling them what we see so that we can navigate safely around all the animals. And we tend to move very, very slowly around animals. And if there's ever a whale that gets curious of us and approaches our boat, tries to, come check us out, that's when we stop the boat. We put the boat in neutral. It's basically like putting your car into park. So we stop the boat and we let the whale just do its thing, let it navigate around us. So I wouldn't say we've had close calls, but it does happen where sometimes a boat can make contact with a whale, and that's never a good situation. So we try to avoid it as much as possible.
Great. Our next question is from Jeanette. What is your cat research assistant's name?
My cat's name is Simba, which is the most common name for a cat.
Nice. Um, okay. Sorry, we are getting the same questions. Oh, okay. This is from Quaker Ridge in Scarsdale, New York. When they flap their fins, do they scare fish away?
Great question. So I did stumble a little bit when I talked about the flipper slapping. So flipper slapping and other sort of behaviors where they're hitting their tail or arms or their whole body at the surface of the water, we generally believe that's communication. The reason why is because whales are incredibly heavy. Those arms are 2,000 pounds each. And when they hit the surface of the water, it's going to create a really loud sound. And sound moves very quickly under the surface of the water. So it's a great way for whales to communicate over longer distances. They can scare fish away with the sound. There's actually a behavior called kick feeding that we have here in the Gulf of Maine, where the whales will basically do a handstand and hit their tails at the surface of the water, and that stuns or scares the fish. They all kind of freeze up, and then the whales blow bubbles around them, trapping them in like an artificial bubble net, and then the whales will feed on them. So sometimes whales can do this sort of hitting the surface with their body to scare fish and feed on them. And sometimes it's just communication. Sometimes it's just play and the whale having a good time. There's also a theory that the whale could be knocking off like dead skin and parasites off its body when it's doing those behaviors.
Nice. Spa day. Sounds good. A different Sarah from me wants to know, how long do whales generally live?
Again, that depends on the type of whale, but generally for most whales, we think around 80 to 100 years. And there are some outliers. So some toothed whale species live a lot less than that, closer to around 30 to 50 years. And then there's the bowhead whale, which is an Arctic species that we think lives over 200 years. So it ranges a lot within the world of whales.
Very cool. Next question, do whales sleep and how do they do it if they do?
This is one of my favorite questions of all time. Whale sleep is very cool. So what it looks like for us when we're seeing them sleep is we call it logging because they typically are up at the surface of the water. They aren't moving very much, just kind of hanging out there and kind of just like coming up and down, like bobbing up and down like a log would if it was in the water. And again, they're not moving very much and they're only breathing about every 1 to 3 minutes. The reason why sleep in whales is so cool is because they don't do it the way that humans do it. So whales are what we call conscious breathers. They have to think about every single breath in order to take it. For us, while we've been sitting here watching this live stream, you're probably not thinking about your breathing. Your brain is automatically doing it for you, making sure you get all the oxygen you need. But for a whale, they can't unconsciously do it. So if they went completely to sleep the way that we would, they would not be able to breathe. So instead, they do something called unihemispheric sleeping. It's a really big scientific term, but if you want to break it down, uni, which means one, there's hemispheric, which is a hemisphere, and our brain has two hemispheres. So unihemispheric sleeping. When they sleep, they only sleep with one hemisphere of their brain asleep at a time. So when they go to sleep, half their brain is on, making sure they're breathing, the other half is resting. And they're going to switch back and forth, making sure both sides of their brain gets rest. And they're going to sleep for probably around 4 to 6 hours in a 24-hour period, and they're not going to do it all at one time. So they usually sleep in naps of about 30 to 45 minutes, sometimes a little bit longer, sometimes a little bit less.
Awesome. Thanks. Our next question comes from Miriam. How many calves can a whale have in their lifetime?
That's another great question that we actually don't know the full answer to. That's one of the things that we are exploring here in the Gulf of Maine with all the data we collect. So whales, humpback whales specifically, generally have a calf every 2 to 3 years. And again, sometimes it can be longer and sometimes it can be shorter, but typically it's every 2 to 3 years. They have one calf at a time. And we actually don't know if whales go through something called reproductive senescence, which basically, again, is a scientific term to say that they stop reproducing. We're not sure if whales ever stop in their lifetime. We have this one whale, her name is Salt. She is one of the first whales that we ever named here in the Gulf of Maine. We saw her for the first time back in the 1970s. So she's pretty old and she's still having calves. Her last calf, I believe, was 2 years ago. I believe it was in 2023. It was a whale named Miso, and that was her 16th calf.
Whoa.
So she's still having calves. We're not sure if humpback whales ever stop.
Cool. Good for them. Okie dokie. We've got many people, too many to list right now, have asked the same question. How long can whales be underwater? I'm sure it depends on the species, but
It does.
based how, at least for humpbacks, and then maybe the longest diving one, if you know,
Yeah.
how long can they stay under?
So humpback whales, the record for the longest dive was set by a humpback whale in Hawaii who was down below the surface for around 45 minutes. So a pretty long time for humpback whales. But the record for the longest diving whale is a type of toothed whale. It's a beaked whale called the goose-beaked whale. They can stay below the surface for over 3 hours.
Whoa,
Yeah, it's a
that's
long
wild.
time.
That's very cool. All right. Next question is, how long have whales been around?
A very, very, very long time. So the first whale, I need to double check this number, but I believe it's around 60 million years ago. The first whale, what we call the ancestral whale, is a Pachycetus, which was first documented in Pakistan. That's in South Asia. And that whale is, I believe, or that fossil, I believe, was aged around 60 million years.
Cool. Sounds good. We had a fun question. Do whales get stung by jellyfish?
Oh, that's a great question.
I can't believe I've never thought about this before.
I've never thought about this either.
Do
So
squid get stung by jellyfish? I don't know. Probably.
we've definitely seen whales and jellyfish in the same location before. Probability wise, I'm sure a jellyfish has come into contact with a whale. They have very, very thick skin, very tough skin, but they do have pain receptors on their skin. So it is possible that they can get stung, but it's also possible that they're just so big and their pain threshold is so high they don't really feel it. But I'm not sure that I don't think like there's some jellyfish that are fatal if humans touch them and don't get treatment, but I'm not sure if humpback whales are the same way. That's a great, I have to explore that question
Yeah,
more.
really good
It's a
question.
great one.
All right, we have a bunch of people asking, basically what happens to a whale when it dies? Does it float? Does it sink? How does that all go down?
Good question. So this is all part of the circle of life. As a whale biologist, I do love when whales live, but whales dying is actually really, really important for the overall marine ecosystem. So usually when a whale dies, if it's dying further offshore, it's going to actually stay in the ocean. Occasionally, if the whale is close enough to shore, it will get washed ashore onto a beach. But if it doesn't get washed ashore and it stays out at sea, at first, when it dies, it is going to float because its body is full of blubber and gases, And that basically makes it act kind of like a balloon, and it will stay up at the surface. And at that time, you'll have a lot of animals that come and scavenge on it. That's generally when the sharks and the birds come and scavenge on it. And then slowly over time, as animals are eating it, it'll start sinking. And as it starts sinking, it brings nutrients down to what we call nutrient poor marine ecosystem. So specifically the deep sea, very nutrient poor area. This whole process is called whale fall. So as that whale is falling, it's bringing nutrients down to different animals in different parts of the ocean. And when it finally settles at the bottom of the ocean, by then it's usually just bones and a little bit of tissue. You'll actually have animals that come and burrow in the bones of the whale and live in the bones of the whale and feed off of them for decades. So it's a really cool process, and you can actually find videos and photos of scientists that have sent robots down to the deep sea and have come across whale falls where they find these bones of these whales with all of the animals living in them. It's a really cool process.
That's really cool. Love it. All right. Our next question is, um, where do the whales in Massachusetts migrate to in the winter?
So all of our humpback whales go down to the Caribbean. Most of them end up off the Dominican Republic, and they're there all winter. That's where they're giving birth to their calves and mating.
Very cool. How do whales communicate with each other? And if so, how do they do it?
They do communicate with each
In
other.
addition to the fin slaps that we've
Yes.
already talked about.
Yeah, so they have behavioral displays of communication where they can slap their fins against the surface of the water, breaching, which is when they jump completely out of the surface. That's also another form of it's a behavior we often assume is communication. Whales also can produce sound. So humpback whales are known for being singers in the ocean. Males especially are producing those really beautiful long songs during the mating season to attract females, and what we think is to sort of ward off other males. But they can also produce other sounds that aren't considered songs. So just shorter clips and versions of those songs that they can do year round. And that's another way that they can communicate. In Stellwagen Bank, we've got hydrophones everywhere, which are underwater microphones. And we use those. There are a bunch of researchers in the Gulf of Maine that use those hydrophones to study whale acoustics and communication. It's very cool.
Awesome. All right, we have a kind of dark question here. Whoops, I just tried to search for the question and now I don't see this one anymore. Everything will be
Oh,
fine. The question effectively was, how much longer will whales survive for? Are whales threatened? Is it possible that whales may go extinct?
okay, there's a lot of parts to that question that I'm going to answer one by one. So, current population status of whales right now, it ranges a lot depending on the type of whale. In the Gulf of Maine, I'm going to focus on the Gulf of Maine first. In the Gulf of Maine, the majority of our whale species are showing a population increase. So they are recovering after commercial whaling that decimated their populations. There are only a handful of species that are showing like a decline, which are the North Atlantic right whales, which are critically endangered. Only about 350 left of those. And globally, there are a couple of whale species that are critically endangered or even considered functionally extinct, like the vaquita, which is a type of toothed whale that there's, again, a handful of whales for that particular species left. So there are some whales that are critically endangered and others that are perfectly fine. Their populations are stable or increasing. We have actually seen some whale species go extinct very recently. In fact, we had one go extinct back in 2007. It was a type of river dolphin that went extinct. So it's very possible for a whale species to go extinct within our lifetime. We're obviously trying to avoid that as much as possible, but it can happen. There was more to the question. Was there a portion about climate change or?
I don't think I specifically said
Okay,
climate change.
I think I
We
made
could
that up.
talk about maybe like what can we do to protect whales is also one of the questions that's floating around in here.
Okay, cool. What can we do to protect whales? There's a lot that we can do. So whales are existing in the general ocean environment. So anything we do to protect the ocean indirectly or directly affects whales and can protect them. One of the things that I talk about a lot is our marine debris. So when we're out documenting information about whales and all of the other animals on Stellwagen Bank, we collect information about trash that we find out there. And the most common type of trash that we find on Stellwagen Bank, especially around whales, is actually balloons.
Mm.
Balloons are really, really harmful to the marine environment and actually just the world in general, because they are generally made out of plastic, and plastic breaks down into smaller and smaller pieces until it becomes microplastic, and microplastic never really goes away. And balloons, when they're in their full form without damage, animals like whales, turtles, birds, they can all swallow them. So I recommend finding alternatives to balloons. Like, I've never complained if someone showered me in chocolate and books instead of balloons. If you are really enjoying balloons, and try using biodegradable ones and following the instructions for how to make sure you dispose of them properly, because there are specific instructions to do that. Going to another way that we can help whales in the ocean is actually by supporting conservation and research wherever you are. So if you have a local park or a sanctuary, a zoo, an aquarium, or an eco tour like a whale watch, those are all really great ways to support research on a much larger scale, which supports conservation on a much larger scale. So if you are anywhere in the world, supporting those organizations helps whales indirectly.
Awesome. That's great. Thanks. The next question is from Perseus. Perseus wants to know, out of all of the whales, which is your favorite?
Humpback whales. I
Humpback
am
whale.
obligated to say that because those are the ones that I focus on for my research.
Sounds good. Also, Miss Goldman's class from Pawtucket, Rhode Island wants a shout out. So, yo to Miss Goldman's class. Okay. Why do whales jump?
We've talked about this a couple of times now, so there's
Oops,
a
sorry.
bunch of different theories. Oh no, not your fault at all. There's a bunch of different theories for why whales jump. The most common ones are communication. Again, the sound of their 80,000-pound bodies hitting the water is going to be really loud, and that's a great way to communicate over long distances. It could be the whale just having a good time playing around because it's fun to jump around. It can be the whale trying to get parasites and barnacles and dead skin off of their body. And it can be a way for the whales to develop and maintain their muscles, kind of like going to the gym.
Cool. We've got a question. A student is asking if you've studied whether or not whales are capable of empathy.
Oh, I have not personally studied this, but there are other studies out there and evidence out there that makes us think they are capable of empathy. So I'll give a couple examples. One of them is that humpback whales and other whales will often try to protect animals, and humpback whales tend to do this the most often. If they get wind of orcas or killer whales hanging around, if they start hearing them, especially if they start hearing calls associated with a hunt, humpback whales have actually been known to go and protect like seals and other prey of killer whales that are in the area. There was a video that I saw circulating on social media a couple of days ago where there were dolphins being chased by some killer whales. In this particular part of the world, killer whales eat dolphins, and humpback whales came in and kind of like chased the killer whales away and protected the dolphins. So that is some evidence that humpback whales do have empathy. It's not concrete evidence. It's still something that we're exploring and researching and trying to understand, because we can't just go and ask them, hey, do you have empathy? We have to, figure it out in other ways. But there is some evidence that they do have empathy.
Awesome. We've got a question from Camilla. What do whales do when it rains?
They're already wet. They don't really care.
They're good. Sounds
Yeah,
good.
if it's a really, really bad storm, we do find that after a really bad storm, like a hurricane, the whales tend to be kind of tired and they're sleeping a lot, which we think is just because of them having to fight the currents and the wind and waves and all of that. But they're already wet. They get along just fine with the rain.
Sounds good. Um, do whales, this is from, well, it doesn't matter. Do whales live near underwater volcanoes?
Underwater volcanoes, to my knowledge, tend to be on the deeper
Pretty
side
deep.
of things.
Yeah, I think so.
So I think they can be living in areas where at the very, very bottom of the ocean there are underwater volcanoes, but I'm not so sure that they're diving down to them because whales typically don't dive down that deep. Um, but underwater volcanoes, to my knowledge, are found all around the world, and whales are found all around the world. So I do think that there's some overlap. They're probably just not meeting face to face.
Cool. We've got a question from Miss Beasley in New York. Her female students would like to know, as a girl, what was the most challenging experience or hurdle getting into this job, and what advice would you have for girls who want to become marine biologists?
That's a really good question. Um, in general, there are a lot of challenges when it comes to being a woman in STEM. Um, just generally trying to battle the sexism that exists in this field and in every field. Advice that I have is to always persist and to rely on a strong support network. So if you are wanting to become a scientist, or actually this applies to any field you're wanting to go into, you should always have a very strong network to support you, both in the field and outside of it. In the field, I mean amazing colleagues and researchers and friends and people that you can rely on at conferences and in, the college or school that you're at. And outside the field, I mean people like friends and family and people that can support you outside of the job. So having a strong support network is probably the thing that has gotten me as far as I have.
Yeah, that's a really good answer. Support networks are critical. Well, we're gonna, I think, actually end on that question because we are almost at 45 minutes. Maybe one more. One more. Samia wants to know, how long do baby calves stay with their mom whale?
Again, depends on the
Depends on the
species.
whale.
For humpback whales, a lot of these questions are,
Yeah,
it depends on the whale.
totally species dependent.
But
They're
for
also
humpback
different.
whales, generally it is between 8 months to 12 months, so approximately a year. But there are some whales that are much less than that, closer to around 6 months, and then other whale species that can go up to several years.
Awesome. Okay, so we always ask everybody the same two questions at the end of every session. And the first question is, if you had everyone's attention in the world and you could say one thing to them about your area, like within your area of expertise, what would you tell them?
I would talk about this is maybe it might make some kids unhappy, but that scene in Finding Nemo, this is one of my favorite things to talk about. Do you remember that scene where Marlin and Dory got swallowed up by a whale and how
Uh-huh.
they escaped through the blowhole of a whale? The blowhole of a whale doesn't connect to the whale's mouth. It only connects to the lungs. So Marlin and Dory shouldn't have been able to escape that whale that way. The movie should have ended there.
So that was it. Just like
That was
cut to
that was the
black,
ending.
thin.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, good one. You got to know this stuff. Um, and then the second question is, you still have everybody's attention in the world, and you
Mhm.
can tell them something about anything. It could be related to your work or not related to your work at all. It could be silly, it could be significant, whatever you want. What's one thing you wish everybody knew?
Okay, this is a piece of advice, but one thing I want everyone to know or to try to do in their life is just be curious. Ask questions about the world you live in, ask a lot of questions, never be afraid to ask questions, because all of the questions that I have asked over my life have gotten me to the point I'm at now. And every question I ask, it becomes over time a research question that I answer with data that I collect. And that's how I do science. So just ask a lot of questions and be curious and stay curious.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Is there anything you'd like to plug? Anything else you'd like us to know before we say goodbye today?
I don't think so,
All
but
right.
thank you so much for having me. I really had a great time doing this.
Yeah, thank you for sharing everything with us. This was really, really cool. I learned a bunch of stuff too. And I've been working in marine biology for a long time.
Glad to
Um,
hear.
okay, everybody, we got through 87 questions in the last 40 minutes. There were 189 unanswered questions. So you are all very curious. We love this curiosity. If you would like to have a session for just your class, you can do that for free. That's what our program is here for. So if you want to talk to another marine biologist, or maybe a chemist or a physicist or a bug biologist, anything. We can match you up, just your class for free on skypeascientist.com. We have like plenty of scientists to go around this semester. We're out of archaeologists, but otherwise we've got everybody else. So feel free to sign up. tell teachers, please tell your colleagues that we're here and we exist. We do better when we serve more of you. So skypeascientist.com, we're here for you. Also, just like a quick plug to keep the lights on over here. This fall, we're selling Eel Facts Advent calendars. You scratch off each number to reveal facts about eels. We also have some on crabs and frogs. This helps us be able to pay for ASL interpretation and offer honoraria to our scientists and keep the ship afloat broadly. So if you look, and if you're into that, cool. That's can be found at squidfacts.net or eelfacts.net. That either works. Thank you for coming. We will be back here in November and December to talk about snails and physics. So hope to see you there. Thank you again for joining us today. And man, that was awesome.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for all of your amazing questions. I had a great time answering them.
Amazing. Yeah, thanks for your curiosity, everybody. We'll see you next time. And thanks,
Bye,
Ramona.
everybody.
Bye.